What happens if you do speak out against Hezbollah in public?
You'll be killed. You will be persecuted. So the judicial system is militarized against or armed against the people who speak up their mind. There is a term in the society called sahsuh. Sahsuh means when somebody slaps somebody on their neck, and which is an actual fact. So if you are Shia from the south and you speak up against Hezbollah in a, let's say, a TikTok video or whatever, their intelligence will capture you, they will beat you, they will whatever, and then they will force you to do another video which is countering what you just said in the first video. So there's that term before the sahsuh and after the sahsuh. Imagine what type of Gestapo, police they do have.
My guest today is Dr. Ghassan Bou Diab. He's a Lebanese peace activist and director of the Demokrattia Center for Research and Strategic Studies. He joins me from Washington. Thank you very much for joining me today, Doctor.
Thank you for having me.
So before we get into the current escalation between Israel and Hezbollah, I want to get a little bit of your insight as someone who has grown up in Lebanon. Tell us, what is Hezbollah in your eyes?
Hezbollah for the Lebanese is an Iranian proxy, and it's a mole inside the Lebanese society, acting, armed, funded, and shielded by the so-called Islamic regime occupying Iran.
But do you think that perspective is as dominant in Lebanon as you say? Because we still do see that the terror group still has a big support on the Lebanese street.
The only big support, which is also diminishing, is from the Shia community. And that's because not anymore of ideological support or ideological agenda, but also because of the interests, the economic interests, because Hezbollah has a big supporter / ally who is the Speaker of the Parliament, who's been in power for the last 40 years, give or take, and he actually controls most of the services in the country, from electricity to internet, so to even having any job in the state would require approval from that speaker and his own proxies. So in a way or another, they created a circle of power, and that circle of power controls literally everything in Lebanon, including media, including the street. So there's a big difference between what you hear on the media and what's actually on the ground. Thanks for free online outlets, you can see now people raising their voice and standing against that terrorist organization.
You mentioned the current political and economic crisis in Lebanon. There's no functioning government. Lebanese people have been unable to access their bank accounts for lack of funds. How did it get to this situation, and who is to blame for it?
The political elite, in alignment with Hezbollah, is to be blamed for that. The political elite spread rumors about a healthy economy where the currency equivalence to the US dollar has been not changed for 2 decades. $1 equals 1,507.5 Lebanese pounds. So we're in a bubble, and that bubble was supposed to explode at any moment, and it happened. It happened when there was an attempt by Hezbollah to take over the Lebanese financial system, to replace the international and national banks by his own version of banks, which is Al-Qard al-Hassan, the goodwill, not donation, but loan. So they attempted that. They had hundreds of branches all over Lebanon, illegal so-called banks. Plus with the explosion of the port of Beirut, whom they they refuse to take responsibility of, and up till now we don't know who did it officially, um, because they have weapons in the port of Beirut. They illegally stored weapons and rockets and ammonium nitrates to do bombs in the civilian port of Beirut. So in most of the situations, the political elite and Hezbollah and his allies are to be blamed for all the current situation that is in Lebanon.
I want to get your reaction to the escalation in violence. And I'd like to correct myself, actually, the escalation in the war, because realistically, it is a war that's been happening between Israel and Hezbollah for almost a year now. It's gone severely unreported in Western media. But tell me your reaction to what we're seeing.
It started in October 8th when Hezbollah started the escalation, claiming that they are supporting Gaza and started firing rockets. It escalated also with the heinous murdering of the 12 kids in Majd al-Shams. And it also went to further when they tried to kill Israeli civilians more and more. So what's happening with Hezbollah is what happened to Hamas, and is what will happen to the Hashd, in my opinion, and to the Houthis, because I think that today Israel is actually doing the war on behalf of whole free world against the extremism, the Shiite terrorism going on by the Iranian proxies. And I don't think that there is a point of retreat to the back. I don't think that we're heading towards any type of de-escalation, because I don't think we can coexist with extremism and terrorism anymore. And it's if things stopped at a gray area where things are not really, fixed and done, we are actually calling again for another October 7, maybe in 5 or 6 years or whatever, when the terrorist proxies get armed again, and, the international politics change, they will try to do that again and again and again, and this will not end. So there is no other option than, winning this war against extremism and terrorism, and getting people back to normal, and getting people back to where they should be, living in peace and harmony, not less, not more.
I want to talk about Israel's pager attack that targeted Hezbollah terrorists in Lebanon. It was one of the most successful precision intelligence operations in the history of modern warfare, successfully targeting terrorists with minimal or as much avoidance to civilian casualties as possible. But I want to ask you, what did that operation reveal about the terror group's network? I saw an analogy that it was like turning on a Christmas tree lights in a dark room.
So once again, Israel proves that it's way ahead in the intelligence world, in the technological world, and by far is the first in the Middle East when it turns to intelligent and the fifth generation of warfare. So this is another a proof of that. And this is another actually fact that Hassan Nasrallah and the proclaimed leaders of Hezbollah need to know, that you cannot win over Israel. You cannot win over Israel with your so-called missiles or rockets, that the Iron Dome is making them look like video games. So there is no equivalence of power. You can't compete with Israel. And I understand Nasrallah when he was, doing those fancy speeches with thousands and thousands of people cheering to him. Yeah, that creates kind of, power ecstasy, if I may say. And then he was counting on the fascist Nazi regime occupying Iran to support him. And he said it loud. our support, our training, our funding is from Iran. And now Iran looks like they're checked out in a way or another, because when they saw the actual war, what does it look like? And they saw that the aircraft carriers are somewhere there, and they saw how strong is Israel and how many allies Israel have in the whole world. They were like, okay, so they came to the, on their knees. Um, Nasrallah today stands alone. He knows that continuing in the same rules of engagement is just a joke, because there is no rules of engagement. Nasrallah knows exactly that there is no place he can hide from the IDF. When they want him down, they can easily eliminate him. But I don't think understanding how the warfare is going on, it looks like um, the strategy of the IDF was to eliminate the third and the fourth level of leadership, and then the second and the first, so that they create that gap between Hezbollah and his population, and which appeared like a very very smart strategy to do. Um, I think that there need to be an exit strategy, which we suggested for Hezbollah, to put all his military, all his rockets, missiles, drones uh, under the control and order of the uh, 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 leader of the Lebanese army, General Joseph Aoun.
I think that that's a big
Because I
misconception
think,
that Western media doesn't understand, is that the fact that Hezbollah is not the official army of Lebanon. There's an official
oh yeah,
Lebanese
oh
army,
yeah.
which Western media consistently fail to address.
Here's the thing, for everybody to know, the Lebanese armed forces is the only army of Lebanon. This army is formed from Lebanese citizens only, solely. This army pledges allegiance to the flag and the constitution of Lebanon only, solely. This army is historically a very big fan and a very big ally to the armies of the free world. Our generals, our officers are trained in the US and in the UK and in the free world country. The army receives aid and support from the US Army and from the allied armies. Most of the armament of the army is from the US. So let that be crystal clear. Hezbollah is a militia. Hezbollah is one of the proxies of the fascist regime occupying Iran. Hezbollah pledges allegiance to Khamenei and before him to Khomeini, and they act as a tool to implement the strategies of the terrorist regime occupying Iran. They have nothing to do with Lebanon or nothing to do with the political interests of Lebanon. Let it be crystal clear. And they don't claim anything else. They say it loud. We are part of the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard.
And so that really doesn't leave much space for the Lebanese army to take any sort of control of the situation there on the border between Israel and Lebanon. In the meantime, over 70,000 Israelis have been internally displaced, and it doesn't look like what we're seeing, especially over the past few days, continued rocket fire from Hezbollah. It doesn't look like they'll be going home anytime soon. Dr. Ghassan Bou Diab, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.